This story is inspired by real-life situations and includes fictional elements for entertainment. Not recommended for viewers under 18.
The last time Daniel Hayes saw Clara Whitmore, she was standing under a street lamp wearing the blue dress he once told her made her look like the sky at dawn. She was crying. But she still let him walk away. 12 years later, she would learn that some goodbyes never actually end. They just wait. Boston, October 2010. The city smelled like rain and fallen leaves. Clara Whitmore stood outside her apartment building on Commonwealth Avenue, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she could hold her heart in place. Across the street, Daniel Hayes leaned against his old silver Honda Civic, his hands buried in the pockets of his worn leather jacket. He looked calm. He wasn't. He had known this moment was coming long before she said the words. "I met someone," Clara said softly. Daniel nodded once like she had just told him the weather forecast, I figured. She blinked. "You did," he shrugged. "You've been somewhere else for weeks." Her chest tightened. Ryan Caldwell had entered her life like a promise. He wore tailored suits and spoke about future investments in European travel like they were inevitable. He had taken her to restaurants where the menus didn't have prices. Daniel took her to diners where the waitress called him hun. Two different worlds, two different futures. He's good to me, Clara said, hating how weak her voice sounded. Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, not at the expensive coat she had started wearing, not at the gold necklace Ryan had given her, at her, "Are you in love with him?" The question landed between them like a dropped glass. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because the truth was complicated. She loved Danielle. But she feared the life that came with him, the uncertainty, the struggle, the way her father's face tightened every time Daniel's name was mentioned. "I don't know," she whispered. Daniel, maybe exhaled slowly. He nodded again like he understood everything. "Maybe he did. Does he love you?" "Yes." The lie came easier. Daniel looked down at the pavement. Rainwater gathered in the cracks. "I can't give you what he can," he said simply. Clara's throat burned. "You give me everything." He shook his head. "No," he said, "I give you love." He looked back up at her. "But love isn't what you're choosing." The words weren't cruel. They were tired. She felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Daniel," he pushed himself off the car. For a second, she thought he might come to her. He didn't. "I always knew this was a possibility," he said. Her heart shattered. "Why aren't you angry?" He smiled faintly. "Because I love you." That made it worse. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know." His calmness felt like distance already forming, like he was leaving her while still standing there. "I wish things were different," she said. Daniel studied her face, memorizing it. He wondered if she would ever understand what she was walking away from, or if she would only realize it when it was too late. "Clara," his voice was gentle. She looked at him. "If this is what you want—" He paused. "I hope he makes you happy." Her breath caught, but because Daniel had always been the one who made her happy, and she was letting him go, not because she didn't love him, but because she loved the life she was afraid of losing more. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, then he turned. He got into his car. The engine started. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, waiting for him to stop, for him to come back, for him to fight for her. He didn't. He drove away, and Daniel Hayes never looked back. But Clara Whitmore would spend the next 12 years wishing he had. Boston, March 2022. Clara Whitmore Caldwell lived on the 32nd floor above the noise, above the sirens, above the ordinary disappointments of ordinary lives. At least that was the illusion. From the floor to ceiling windows of the penthouse, the Charles River stretched like a sheet of cold glass under the pale morning sun. Rowers cut through the water in perfect rhythm, their bodies moving with purpose. Clara watched them while holding a cup of coffee she had already forgotten to drink. Behind her, the apartment was silent, too silent. No television, no music, no voice calling her name. Ryan had left early. He always left early. She glanced at the kitchen counter where his espresso cup sat in the sink. A faint brown stain curved along the porcelain like a fingerprint. He hadn't rinsed it. He used to rinse it. She didn't know why that detail mattered. But it did. It was strange, the things that signaled the end of love. Not betrayal, not screaming, not slammed doors, just small absences. She turned away from the window and walked down the hallway, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. The master bedroom door was still open. Their bed was perfectly made, except for his side. His pillow was indented. Cold. Clara dressed for work in silence. Navy skirt, cream silk blouse, diamond stud earrings. Ryan had given her those on their 3rd anniversary. He had said, "You deserve beautiful things." At the time, she had believed he meant her. Now she understood he meant objects. Clara was a partner at Whitmore and Klein, one of Boston's most respected law firms. Her name was etched in glass beside men who had once intimidated her. Now they respected her, feared her, needed her. Her office overlooked the city skyline, but today the view felt distant. Her phone buzzed on her desk. A notification, Ryan Caldwell. She felt the instinctive lift in her chest. It hadn't completely died yet. She opened the message, but it wasn't a message. It was a photo. No, not a photo sent to her. A photo Ryan had been tagged in. Her stomach tightened. It was from the previous night. A charity gala she hadn't attended because she had been working late on a murder case. Ryan stood in his tuxedo, handsome, composed, untouchable. And beside him, a woman, young, blonde, beautiful. Her hand rested lightly on Ryan's chest, intimate, familiar. Clara stared at it. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She tapped the woman's profile. Emily Vance, 26, marketing consultant. Clara noticed how naturally Emily fit beside him, how easily, how replaceable Clara suddenly felt. She locked her phone, set it down, picked it up again. Her reflection stared back at her from the black screen. 34 years old, successful, admired, alone. Ryan came home at 9:17 p.m. Clara knew because she had been sitting in the living room in the dark for over an hour waiting. He loosened his tie as he walked in, stopping when he saw her. Clara, he said, surprised. You're home early. Early, it was 9. I saw the photo, she said. He didn't ask which one. He didn't pretend. He just sighed, and that hurt more than anything. It's not what you think, he said automatically. Yeah, she almost laughed. Isn't it, he ran a hand through his hair. It was a work event. She had her hand on your chest. He hesitated. That hesitation was the truth. Clara stood slowly. The room felt colder. Are you sleeping with her? The question hung in the air. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw it. Not guilt, not shame, distance. Clara. He said her name like a warning, like a confession. Her heart cracked quietly. How long? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She nodded slowly, because now she understood everything. The late nights, the sudden business trips, the way he had stopped touching her. I see, she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. Ryan stepped forward. This doesn't change anything. She stared at him. It changes everything she wanted to say, but she didn't, because she knew what he meant. Their life, their status, their image, their marriage was a structure, not a relationship. You should get some rest, he said gently, like she was the fragile one, like he was the victim of her discovery. She laughed then, a small broken sound. I chose you, she said. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ryan frowned. What? She shook her head. Nothing. He didn't understand. He had never been the one she risked losing. He had been the safe choice, the smart choice, the acceptable choice. Ryan walked past her toward the bedroom. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He didn't stop. Clara stood alone in the dark apartment. She thought she might cry. She didn't. Instead, her mind betrayed her. It drifted backward to another night, another man, another version of herself. She remembered Daniel's old Honda, the way he used to look at her like she was enough. He had never made her feel replaceable, never made her feel like an accessory. She wondered where he was now, if he was happy, if he had loved someone else, if he ever thought of her. She hoped he didn't, because the truth was unbearable. She had traded love for security, and somehow she had ended up with neither. Clara walked back to the window. The city glittered below her, the cold, distant, unreachable. For the first time in 12 years, Clara Whitmore allowed herself to admit the truth. She had built a beautiful life on top of a grave. Boston, September 2022. The first thing Clara noticed was the voice. Calm, even. Familiar in a way that made her chest forget how to breathe. She hadn't seen him yet. She was standing near the back of the grand ballroom at the Boston Harbor Hotel, half listening to the low hum of professional conversations around her. Lawyers, investors, entrepreneurs, all dressed in tailored confidence, holding glasses of white wine and ambition, the annual East Coast Technology and Law Conference. She was there because Whitmore and Klein represented 3 emerging tech firms, and her presence signaled power. But now power felt irrelevant, because she heard him. Success isn't about proving people wrong, the voice said into the microphone. It's about outgrowing the version of yourself that believed you weren't enough. Her fingers tightened around her glass. No, it couldn't be. Her heart began to pound, not fast, but heavy, like something waking up after a long sleep. Slowly, almost afraid, Clara turned toward the stage, and there he was, Daniel Hayes, except he wasn't. Not the Daniel she remembered. that Daniel had worn faded denim and uncertainty. His hair had been longer, softer, his posture slightly apologetic, like he existed on the edges of other people's lives. This man stood at the center of the room like he belonged there. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly fitted. His hair was shorter now, darker, his shoulders broader. His presence undeniable, confident, composed, untouchable. The screen behind him displayed his name, Daniel Hayes, founder and CEO, Halcyon Systems. The audience listened to him with admiration, respect, the kind of respect Clara had always known he deserved. Her throat tightened. He had done it. He had built something. He had become someone the world couldn't ignore. And he was everything her parents had once said he'd never be. And suddenly none of that mattered because she realized something else. He looked happy, not the fragile happiness he used to carry, not the kind that depended on her. This happiness was solid, independent, free. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you, Daniel continued, becomes the best thing that ever happened for you. Clara felt those words land inside her. Did he mean? No, of course not. She was just one of many chapters in his life, not the whole story. Not anymore. The audience applauded. Daniel smiled politely, professional, distant. The moderator stepped forward, shaking his hand. Clara couldn't move. People began to stand, gathering their things, talking excitedly about innovation and opportunity. She stood frozen, watching him, memorizing him as if she had the right. He stepped down from the stage. Investors approached him immediately, hands extended, voices eager. He handled it effortlessly, gracefully, like he had always belonged in this world. Clara wondered if he had ever felt as small as she felt right now. Then, as if pulled by something neither of them could control, Daniel looked up and saw her. Everything stopped. The room, the noise, the air. For a moment, neither of them moved. Clara's heart climbed into her throat. His face didn't change, not surprise, not anger, not joy, nothing, and somehow that nothing hurt more than anything else ever could. He excused himself from the investors, walked toward her, each step measured. Calm, she forgot how to stand, how to breathe, and how to exist. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint scar on his chin from when he'd fallen off his bike at 17, close enough that she could remember what it felt like to touch him. Clara. Her name sounded different in his voice now, less like a promise, more like a memory. Hi, she said softly. It was the only word she trusted herself to say. He nodded once. It's been a while, 12 years, 4 months, 6 days, but she just said yes. Silence stretched between them, awkward, unfamiliar. He glanced at the conference badge hanging around her neck. Whitmore and Klein, she swallowed. I'm a partner now. He nodded again. That's impressive. She wanted him to sound proud. He sounded polite. And you, she said, her voice barely steady, you built all this. His eyes flickered briefly. Something like that. And something like that. As if it hadn't taken everything. As if he hadn't rebuilt himself from ashes she helped create. I didn't know you were in Boston, she said. I moved back 2 years ago. 2 years. 2 years they had lived in the same city, breathing the same air, existing in the same world, without knowing, without touching, without being. That's... She hesitated. That's good. He didn't respond. He just looked at her. Not the way he used to. Not like she was his future, like she was someone from another lifetime, someone he had survived. How have you been? He asked. The question was simple. The answer was not. She could have said successful, married, accomplished. Instead, she said, I'm fine. He studied her face for a moment, as if deciding whether to believe her. I'm glad. He wasn't, not really. He was being kind, professional, detached, and she hated how much she missed the boy who had never been able to hide what he felt. An awkward pause settled again. He broke it. It was good seeing you, Clara. Past tense, seeing, not talking, not reconnecting, just seeing. He gave her a small nod, then he turned, just like he had 12 years ago, and walked away. She stood there, alone in a crowded room, her chest hollow, her hands cold. He hadn't asked for her number, hadn't asked to see her again, hadn't asked anything because he didn't need to, because he didn't need her. And that was the moment Clara Whitmore realized the truth she had spent 12 years running from. Daniel Hayes was no longer hers, and maybe he never would be again. The first night after seeing him again, Clara didn't sleep. She lay beside Ryan in their king-size bed, staring at the ceiling while his breathing remained slow and undisturbed beside her. He slept on his back, one arm flung carelessly across his pillow, his phone face down on the nightstand like a secret resting between them. She wondered, not for the first time, who he was dreaming about. It wasn't her. She turned her head slightly, studying his face in the darkness. There had been a time when she memorized that face the way she once memorized Daniel's, back when Ryan represented safety, certainty, arrival, back when she believed love could grow from stability. But love, she had learned, did not grow in controlled environments. It either burned or it didn't exist at all. She closed her eyes and saw Daniel, not the boy from 12 years ago, the man from the conference, the distance in his eyes, the way he had said her name like it belonged to the past. She pressed her lips together, trying to stop the memory from replaying. It didn't work. And the next morning, Clara arrived at her office earlier than usual. Boston was still gray with early autumn, the sidewalks damp from overnight rain. She walked through the lobby of Whitmore and Klein with her usual composure, nodding at associates who straightened slightly when they saw her. Respect status. She had spent 12 years building this version of herself, and now she wasn't sure who she had built it for. She closed her office door behind her and set her bag down carefully. Her desk was immaculate, orderly, predictable. She sat down, and then without letting herself think too much about it, she opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She told herself it was just curiosity, just professional interest, nothing more. She typed, Daniel Hayes, Halcyon Systems. His profile appeared instantly. Articles, interviews, photographs, his face older, sharper, stronger. She clicked one at random. Tech visionary Daniel Hayes disrupts cybersecurity market visionary. The word made her chest ache. She scrolled. There were photos of him at conferences, award ceremonies, panel discussions, always alone, no wedding ring, no wife mentioned, no family. Her eyes moved quickly, searching. She didn't know what she was looking for or were what she was hoping to find. Then she saw it. An interview from 3 years ago. She clicked. The interviewer asked, You've built an incredible company. Do you ever regret anything from your past? Daniel's answer was printed beneath. Regret is a strange thing. It teaches you who you were, but it doesn't get to decide who you become. Clara swallowed. Her throat felt tight. She kept reading. Are you married? No, never found the time. A pause. Even in text, she could feel it. Something like that. Her vision blurred. She leaned back in her chair. He had never married. 12 years. No one. Her mind betrayed her immediately. Was it because of her or despite her? She didn't know which answer hurt more. Across the city, Daniel Hayes stood in his office overlooking the harbor. His office was larger than Clara's, cleaner, colder, a reflection of the man he had forced himself to become. He stared at his phone, at the email he had opened 3 times without responding. Subject, East Coast Technology and Law Conference. Thank you. It was from the conference organizers. At the bottom, there was a photograph attached, a group photo of speakers and attendees. He was in the center, and there off to the side, Clara. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at him. He hadn't noticed that. Not until now. He stared at her face. She looked the same and completely different, older, more beautiful, more tired. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself she didn't matter. He had spent 12 years teaching himself that lesson. He locked his phone and set it down, walked to the window. Boston stretched out before him. The city where he had lost everything, the city where he had rebuilt himself. He remembered the night he left, the way his hands had trembled in the steering wheel, the way he had driven for hours without knowing where he was going, the way her name had lived in his chest like an open wound. He had loved her long after she stopped loving him, long after she married someone else, long after he learned the truth. That love alone had never been enough for her. He had hated her for that for a while, but hatred required energy. Eventually, he had nothing left to give her except silence. He closed his eyes briefly, but seeing her again had changed something he didn't want to examine too closely. A crack in a wall he had spent years building. He opened his eyes, walked back to his desk, picked up his phone again. His thumb hovered over the screen. He could find her number easily. One call, one message, one moment of weakness. He set the phone down. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't go back there. He had survived her once. He wouldn't risk not surviving her again. That night, Clara stood in front of her bathroom mirror. She studied her reflection. She tried to see what Daniel had seen, what Ryan saw, what she saw. She didn't know anymore. Her phone sat on the counter beside her, silent. She hated that she wanted it to ring, hated that she wanted it to be him. She touched the glass lightly. Her reflection touched her back. A ghost of a girl who had once believed love was enough. Clara Whitmore had everything she had chosen, everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed for. So why did it feel like she had lost By October, the silence in Clara's marriage had developed a texture. It wasn't loud. It didn't slam doors or shatter glass. It settled into the corners of their penthouse like dust, fine, invisible, suffocating. Ryan no longer bothered pretending. He didn't explain his late nights. He didn't offer excuses. He moved through their shared space like a businessman occupying a hotel suite, polite, detached, temporary. Clara noticed everything. The way he angled his phone away from her, the way he smiled at messages that had nothing to do with her, the way he stopped asking how her day had been. One Thursday night, she stood at the kitchen island watching him knot his tie in the reflection of the darkened window. You're going out, she said. It wasn't a question. Ryan adjusted his cufflinks. Yes. With her, he paused. Not long enough to suggest shame, just long enough to suggest irritation. Clara, he said, his voice calm rehearsed. I don't think this conversation is productive. Productive, as if their marriage were a quarterly earnings call. She turned to face him fully. When were you going to tell me you stopped loving me? The question hung between them. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her. And for a moment, she saw the man she had married, the man who had once held her face in his hands and promised her a future, but that man was gone now, replaced by someone colder, more honest. I don't know when it happened, he said. His voice wasn't cruel. That would have been easier. It was factual, like he was describing the weather. Her chest tightened. And you're just okay with that, he sighed. I think we both know that this hasn't been real for a long time. She flinched, because he was right, and she hated him for saying it. We have a life, she said weakly. We have an arrangement, he corrected. The word cut deeper than anything else. Arrangement. Not love, not marriage. Arrangement. He picked up his coat. I'll be late. And then he left just like that. No apology, no hesitation, no attempt to fix what was broken. The door closed softly behind him. Clara stood there long after he was gone, listening to the echo of a life she didn't recognize anymore. 3 nights later, she saw Daniel again. She hadn't planned to. She told herself she hadn't. But some part of her knew exactly what she was doing when she agreed to attend the private networking reception hosted by Halcyon Systems. It was held in a renovated industrial building in Cambridge, exposed brick walls, low golden lighting. The air smelled like expensive whiskey and ambition. She spotted him immediately. He stood near the bar, his sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened slightly. He looked less like a CEO tonight, more like himself. Her heart betrayed her. It always had. She told herself she could leave, turn around, pretend she hadn't seen him. But then he looked up and saw her. There it was again, that moment, that pause in time. He didn't look away, neither did she. He excused himself from the man he was speaking with and walked toward her, each step steady, controlled. Clara. Her name still belonged to his voice. Hi. God, she hated how small she sounded. I didn't know you were coming, he said. I almost didn't. Something flickered in his eyes, gone too quickly to name. They stood there surrounded by strangers and history. How have you been? He asked. She let out a small breath. Honest answer. He nodded. I've been better. He studied her face carefully, as if searching for something, or confirming something he already knew. I'm sorry to hear that. She laughed softly. Are you... The question slipped out before she could stop it. He didn't answer right away. I don't want you to be unhappy, he said finally. It wasn't the same as before. Before, her happiness had been his responsibility. Now it was just an observation. She nodded. That's fair. Silence settled between them again, but it felt different this time, less final, more fragile. I read about your company, she said. He shrugged slightly. Keeps me busy, I'm sure. She hesitated, then, I'm proud of you. The words hung in the air. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He looked away briefly, then back at her. Thank you. He didn't say it meant anything, but she saw it. The crack, small, dangerous. Daniel, she said, quietly. He waited at. There were years when I wanted to call you. He didn't move, didn't breathe, but I didn't know if I had the right. He let out a slow breath. You didn't? The honesty stung. She nodded. I know. Another silence. He could have walked away. He should have. Instead, he asked, why now? The question carried 12 years inside it. She swallowed. Because seeing you again made me realize, she faltered, made me realize I never stopped loving you. She couldn't say it at how much time has passed. He watched her carefully. Time wasn't the only thing that had passed. Pain had, love had, life had. And yet, here they were, 2 people standing in the wreckage of a choice neither of them could undo. Clara, he said gently, we're not those people anymore. She knew that, but her heart hadn't learned it yet. No, she whispered. They stood there for another moment. Then someone called his name. Reality intruded. He stepped back slightly. Distance. Protection. It was good talking to you. Not goodbye. Not yet. Yeah, she said. It was. He walked away. But this time, he looked back, and that was enough to break her all over again. Later that night, Clara lay in bed alone. Ryan hadn't come home. Her phone sat on her nightstand as she stared at it, her heart pounding, her mind screaming at her to stop, to let the past stay buried, but her fingers moved anyway. She opened her contacts, added a new number. She stared at his name, Daniel. Her thumb hovered over the screen. One message, that was all it would take. She typed, "It was good seeing you tonight." She stared at it for a long time, then she pressed send. The message disappeared into the dark, and Clara Whitmore realized some mistakes didn't happen all at once. They happened quietly, one small choice at a time. Daniel saw the message at 12:43 a.m. He was sitting alone in his living room, the city lights flickering beyond the glass like distant signals he had stopped trying to interpret. "It was good seeing you tonight." He read it once. Then again, he didn't respond, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he knew exactly what saying anything would mean. His thumb hovered over the screen, his reflection staring back at him from the dark surface. 12 years ago, he would have answered in seconds. He would have crossed cities for her. He would have crossed oceans. Now he set the phone down on the coffee table and waited for his heart to catch up with the man he had become. Clara didn't sleep. She watched the ceiling, watched the slow movement of shadows, watched the seconds turn into regret. Her phone remained silent. By morning, she told herself she deserved that silence. By afternoon, she hated it. By evening, she accepted it. And then, at 7:12 p.m., her phone buzzed. She froze. Her heart began to pound so hard she could feel it in her throat. She picked it up. Daniel. Just her name. Daniel. It was 2 words. Careful, measured, but not nothing. Never nothing. She stared at the screen for a long time, then she typed, "Clara, can I see you?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Her breath caught, then, "Daniel, that's not a good idea." Her chest tightened. She typed anyway, "Clara, please." This time his reply took longer, long enough for hope to become humiliation. Daniel. Oh, why she didn't know how to answer that question with anything but the truth, and the truth terrified her. But she typed it anyway, "Clara, because I need to say something I should have said a long time ago." Silence. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last. Then, "Daniel, tomorrow, 6 p.m., Harbor Walk." She closed her eyes. He hadn't said yes, but he hadn't said no. The next evening, the harbor smelled like salt and memory. Clara saw him before he saw her. He stood near the railing, hands in his coat pockets, staring out at the water. He looked calm. He had barely slept, barely breathed. He turned when he heard her footsteps. Their eyes met. No escape now. "Hi," she said softly. He nodded. "Hi." The word carried distance, protection. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to remember, far enough to respect what she had broken. "Thank you for coming," she said. He shrugged faintly. "You said it was important." It was everything. She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. She hated that he could see it. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. He didn't help her, didn't rescue her. He had learned not to. So she forced herself to continue. "I read your interview." His expression didn't change. "You said regret teaches you who you were." He looked at the water. It does." Her voice broke. "Regret who I was." That made him look at her. Really look at her. She swallowed. "I was a coward, Daniel." He didn't respond. "I told myself I was choosing my future, my family, my stability." She laughed bitterly, "But I was choosing fear." The word hung between them. He knew that word. He had lived inside it. "I was afraid of struggling," she said, "afraid of disappointing everyone." Her eyes met his. "I wasn't afraid of losing you." She paused. "That's what I didn't understand." Silence. Cold. Honest. Tears filled her eyes, "But I should have been." His jaw tightened. 12 years of pain pressed against his ribs. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I still love you." She could have lied. She didn't. "Because I never stopped loving you." The words shattered something open. He inhaled sharply. She saw it, the crack, the wound, still there. "I tried," she whispered. "I tried to be the person I chose to be. I tried to love him. I tried to forget you." Her voice broke. "I couldn't." Daniel looked away. The harbor blurred, not from distance, from memory. "You don't get to say that," he said quietly. The words weren't angry. They were broken. Her heart clenched. "I know." He laughed softly. There was no humor in it. "You don't get to come back into my life and tell me you loved me this whole time." His voice trembled despite him. "Do you know what that does to me?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He turned to her fully. His eyes burned. "I loved you for years after you left." The confession fell between them like glass. She stopped breathing. "Years," he repeated. "I kept thinking you'd call, that you'd realize you made a mistake." His voice cracked. "I built an entire life trying to prove I was enough for you." Tears slid down her cheeks. I was enough, she whispered. He shook his head. But you didn't choose me. The truth. Simple. Permanent. He exhaled slowly. I stopped loving you the day I realized you weren't coming back. The words hit her like a physical blow. She flinched. He saw it and hated himself for still caring. But that doesn't mean it didn't destroy me first, he added quietly. Silence stretched between them, raw, exposed. He looked at her. The woman he had loved, the woman who had broken him, the woman he had survived. I learned how to live without you, he said, not cruel, not kind, just true. Her voice barely existed. Are you happy? He thought about it, yes. Not because of her, not anymore. She nodded slowly, her heart breaking in a way she deserved. I'm glad, she whispered. He didn't say he was glad she was happy because he didn't know if she was, and he didn't know if it was his place to care. The wind moved between them, cold, final. Daniel, he shook his head gently. Don't. One word. A boundary. A mercy. I'm not the man you remember, he said. She knew. That was the tragedy. I know. He stepped back. Distance. Safety. Goodbye. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, Clara. He turned. She didn't stop him. She had done that once before, and she had no right to do it now. He walked away. And Clara Whitmore realized loving someone didn't mean they would stay. And sometimes it didn't mean they would come back. The night Clara confessed her love, Daniel didn't go home. He walked past the quiet restaurants along the harbor, past the couples sitting close together, their hands brushing across tabletops like promises, past the version of himself he barely recognized anymore. The wind off the water cut through his coat, but he welcomed it. It gave him something physical to focus on, something that wasn't her voice repeating inside his head. I never stopped loving you. He stopped under a flickering street lamp, closed his eyes, and for a moment he hated her again, not for leaving, but for meaning something still. He had spent 12 years turning her into a memory. And in one night she had become real again. Clara sat alone in the penthouse when Ryan came home. It was nearly midnight. He smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't the one she had bought him. He loosened his tie when he saw her sitting on the couch in the dark. You're still up. She didn't answer right away. She was studying him, this man she had chosen, this man she had built her life around, this man she didn't love. I saw Daniel, she said. Ryan stilled slightly. It wasn't jealousy, just curiosity. The mechanic. The word hit harder than it should have. He's not a mechanic anymore. Ryan shrugged, walking to the bar. People change. Yes, they did. I'm leaving you, Clara said. The words landed softly. Ryan froze. The ice in his glass clinked faintly. He turned to look at her. Not angry, not shocked, just still. Is this about him? She thought about it. Daniel's face, Daniel's voice, Daniel's pain. No, she said honestly. This is about me. Ryan studied her carefully, as if trying to see the woman he had married, the woman he had lost. When he asked soon, he nodded slowly. He didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't fight because he had left her long ago. They both knew it. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. That was all. No drama, no tears, just the quiet end of something that had never really been alive. The divorce took 3 months. 3 months of paperwork, 3 months of lawyers speaking for them, 3 months of separating a life built on compromise. Clara moved into a smaller apartment across the river. No penthouse, no floor-to-ceiling windows, just space. Honest space. It felt unfamiliar and free. At night, the silence was different now, not empty, open. She didn't call Daniel. She didn't text him. She didn't look for him because for the first time in her life, she wasn't choosing a man. She was choosing herself. Still, she hoped Daniel heard about the divorce from someone else, a mutual acquaintance at a fundraising dinner. Did you hear about Clara Caldwell? He hadn't heard that name in months. He kept his expression neutral. No, she left her husband. Big scandal, apparently. Daniel nodded politely, like it meant nothing, but it did. It meant everything. He went home that night and sat in the dark, his phone in his hand, her number still there. It's still dangerous. He wondered why she did it, if she expected something from him, if she was waiting. He hated that he wanted her to be waiting. He stood and walked to the window. Boston stretched out before him. The same city, different lives. He had built a life without her, a good life, a safe life, a life that didn't break him. So why did it feel incomplete tonight? He thought about the boy he used to be, the boy who would have run to her without hesitation, the boy who believed love was enough. That boy was gone, wasn't he? He picked up his phone, opened her contact. His thumb hovered over her name. One call, one risk, one chance to lose everything again, or everything he never stopped wanting. He closed his eyes and made a choice. Clara was reading when her phone rang. Unknown number. Her heart began to race. She knew. She didn't know how, but she knew. Her hand trembled as she answered. Hello, silence. Breathing. Familiar breathing. Clara. Her eyes filled instantly. She couldn't speak. Not yet. I heard about the divorce, Daniel said. His voice was careful, guarded. Yes. Silence, stretched, fragile. Are you okay? The question almost destroyed her because he still cared. I am, she whispered, and for the first time it was true. He exhaled slowly. I'm glad. Another silence. Neither of them knew how to do this, how to begin again, or if they even should. Daniel, she said softly. He waited. She didn't say, come back, didn't say, I need you, didn't say, I love you, because love wasn't something you asked for. It was something given freely or not at all. I'm here, she said. That was all. Not a request, not a demand, just truth. He closed his eyes. On the other end of the line, so was he. And for the first time in 12 years, the choice was his. Winter came quietly to Boston. It covered the city in white and silence, softening the sharp edges of buildings and memories alike. Clara Whitmore learned how to live alone. Not the lonely kind of alone she had felt in the penthouse with Ryan. Not the aching, invisible loneliness of being unseen. This was different. This was chosen. Her apartment was small, but it was hers. The radiator hissed like an old companion. The windows frosted at the corners in the early mornings. She bought furniture slowly, deliberately choosing things not to impress anyone but herself. She learned the sound of her own footsteps. She learned the shape of her own thoughts. And sometimes she allowed herself to learn the shape of her regret. Daniel had called her only once. That night, they hadn't spoken since, not because they couldn't, but because neither of them reached for something they weren't sure they were allowed to hold. Still, she carried him with her, not as hope, but as truth. Daniel stood in his office on the first Monday of January, watching snow fall over the harbor. Halcyon Systems had just finalized its largest acquisition. His name was in business journals again, his face on screens, his voice quoted in rooms he hadn't entered. He had everything he once believed would make him whole. Success, security, respect. And yet, he understood now that wholeness wasn't something you earned, it was something you protected. His phone sat on his desk, her name still there, still quiet. He had thought about her every day since the call, not obsessively, not painfully, just honestly. He thought about the girl she had been, the woman she had become, the space between those two people, and the space between who he had been with her and who he was now. He loved her. He would probably always love her, but love, he had learned, was not the same thing as belonging. He picked up his phone, scrolled to her name, and pressed call. Clara answered on the second ring. Her voice was softer than he remembered. Daniel, he closed his eyes briefly. Hi. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, not yet. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said. You're not. She was sitting by her window, her hands trembling slightly. Snow fell outside, just like it had the night he left her 12 years ago. I wanted to see you, he said. Her breath caught. Hope was a dangerous thing. Okay, she whispered. They met at a small cafe on Newbury Street. Neutral ground, safe ground. She saw him before he saw her, or maybe he saw her and pretended not to. He looked the same and completely different. He walked toward her, and she knew. Before he said anything, she knew. They sat across from each other, 2 coffees between them, 2 lives between them. He studied her face. She didn't look away. I meant what I said, he began. Her heart pounded. I forgive you. The words landed gently, not dramatic. Not angry, just true. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Thank you, she whispered. But he wasn't finished. I forgave you a long time ago, Clara. He paused, but forgiveness and going back are not the same thing. There it was, the truth she had always feared and always deserved. She nodded slowly, her chest tightening. I know. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. You were the love of my life, past tense. Her vision blurred, and losing you, he continued, forced me to become someone stronger. He exhaled. Someone who could survive you. The words weren't cruel, they were honest. She felt them settle into her bones. I don't regret loving you, he said. Her tears fell freely now. But I can't build my future in the place where I lost myself. Silence, final, complete. She had known this moment would come. Still, it broke her. I understand, she said, and she did. That was the worst part. He reached across the table, not to hold her, just to touch her hand once. A goodbye, not an invitation. You deserve peace, he said. She almost laughed, because peace was the one thing she had traded away. You too, she whispered. He stood. She didn't ask him to stay, because love that needed begging wasn't love, and she had taken enough from him already. He walked to the door, paused, looked back at her one last time. Their eyes met. No anger, no blame, just love and its consequences. Then he left. Years later, Clara would still think about him, not every day, but in quiet moments, when the snow fell, when she heard a certain song, when she remembered the girl she had once been. She never married again, not because she couldn't, but because she understood now what love cost and what it deserved. Daniel Hayes became a legend in his industry. He built companies, he built a life, he built something unbreakable. And sometimes late at night, he allowed himself to remember her, not as regret, but as the turning point, the moment his life split into before and after. They never saw each other again, but they carried each other forward in different ways, in different lives, because some loves don't end. They transform into lessons, into scars, into strength, and sometimes into peace.